Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
The intellectual history of finance contains moments of profound reformulation, where the very grammar of a discipline is irrevocably altered. Harry Markowitz, 1960 monograph, Portfolio Selection Efficient Diversification of Investments, represents such a moment. Expanding upon the foundational insights of his earlier doctoral work, this book provided the complete architecture for what would become modern portfolio theory. It presented a comprehensive, mathematically rigorous framework for portfolio construction, transforming an activity once guided by intuition and aphorism into a field of applied science. The following essay undertakes a deep, section-by-section evaluation of the book's core claims, assessing the internal logic, the methodological innovations, and the specific arguments Markowitz advances. This analysis will probe the work's internal structure, examining the powerful coherence of its claims while also exploring the inherent limitations and philosophical commitments embedded within its elegant mathematical structure, all within the context of the intellectual landscape it so decisively reshaped. Section 1. The initial formulation of the investor's problem. The book opens by framing the portfolio selection problem with a deceptive simplicity that belies its revolutionary character. Markowitz posits that the investor's desiderata can be distilled into two primary objectives: the desire for high returns and the aversion to uncertainty. His foundational claim is that these objectives can be quantified and formally managed. He proposes that the future performance of a security is best understood as a probability distribution of possible returns. From this distribution, he extracts two critical parameters. The first is the expected value of return, a statistical measure representing the anticipated average outcome, which serves as a proxy for the desirability of an investment. The second, and far more transformative, parameter is the variance of returns, which he offers as the quantitative measure of risk. The central argument in this initial section is that the portfolio selection problem is, in its essence, a problem of choosing a portfolio that maximizes expected return for a given level of variance, or conversely, minimizes variance for a given level of expected return. In evaluating this claim, one recognizes its immense power. Markowitz provided a precise, operational definition for the previously nebulous concept of investment risk. By equating risk with the statistical variance of returns, he made it measurable, manageable, and, most importantly, optimizable. This move, while elegant, carries with it a profound assumption that investors perceive risk symmetrically. Variance penalizes upside volatility, the chance of unexpectedly high returns, with the same mathematical weight as it penalizes downside volatility, the chance of loss. This specific formulation presupposes a particular type of rational investor, one whose utility function is quadratic, a simplification that succeeding financial theories would come to scrutinize with considerable intensity. Section 2. The mean variance criterion and the calculus of diversification. Having established expected return, or mean, and variance as the core metrics, Markowitz proceeds to articulate the mechanism of diversification with unprecedented mathematical clarity. The conventional wisdom of diversification, encapsulated in the adage about avoiding a single basket for one's eggs, existed as a qualitative rule of thumb. Markowitz's central claim in this section is that the risk of a portfolio depends profoundly on the covariance between its constituent assets, a measure of how their returns move in relation to one another. He demonstrates this through the formula for portfolio variance. This formula explicitly shows that the total risk is a function of the weighted variances of individual securities plus a term that incorporates the weighted covariances of every pair of securities in the portfolio. The profound implication, which he systematically unpacks, is that combining assets whose returns are imperfectly correlated can produce a portfolio with a lower variance than a simple weighted average of the individual asset variances would suggest, he effectively proves that authentic diversification is a product of managing interrelationships, a far more sophisticated task than assembling a large number of different securities. The evaluation of this claim reveals its genius. It formalizes the insight that a portfolio containing individually risky assets can, as a whole, be surprisingly safe if those assets have low or negative covariance. The critique, which Markowitz himself acknowledges later in the work, resides in the immense informational burden this claim imposes. To implement this principle fully, an investor would need to estimate the expected return and variance for every security under consideration, plus the covariance between every possible pair of those securities. For a universe of even 100 securities, this necessitates the calculation of nearly 5,000 distinct covariance estimates, a computationally daunting, if achievable, task in the mid-20th century and one fraught with a high potential for estimation. Section 3. The geometry of choice and the efficient frontier. Building upon the algebraic foundation of the mean variance criterion, Markowitz introduces a powerful visual and conceptual tool. The efficient frontier. This section's primary argument is that for any given universe of assets, there exists a specific set of portfolios that are demonstrably superior to all other possibilities. He defines the set as the efficient set, or what is now universally known as the efficient frontier. A portfolio is efficient if it offers the highest possible level of expected return for its level of risk, as measured by variance or standard deviation. Alternatively, an efficient portfolio provides the lowest possible risk for its given level of expected return. All other portfolios are classified as inefficient or dominated because another portfolio exists that offers either a higher return for the same risk or lower risk for the same return. This concept is presented graphically as a curve on a two-dimensional plane, with risk on the horizontal axis and expected return on the vertical axis. The evaluation of this claim highlights its conceptual elegance and its transformative effect on investment practice. The efficient frontier provides a clear, unambiguous map of optimal choices. It converts the abstract problem of portfolio selection into a concrete, geometric problem of identifying a point on a curve. The investor's task is reduced to selecting a single portfolio from this efficient set that best aligns with their individual risk tolerance. This framing is intellectually compelling and provides a definitive answer to the question of what constitutes an optimal portfolio. The slight irony, of course, is that the perfect, smooth curve depicted in textbooks is a theoretical construct. Its real-world application depends entirely on the quality of the inputs estimates of expected returns, variances and covariances which remain subject to considerable uncertainty and error, a practical complication that the pure theory elegantly sidesteps. Section 4. Computational methods and the single index model. Acknowledging the formidable computational demands of the full covariance model, Markowitz dedicates a substantial portion of the book to the practical challenges of implementation. The central claim of this section is that the optimization problem, while complex, is solvable, and that simplifying assumptions can make it more tractable. He develops the critical line algorithm, a specific quadratic programming procedure for calculating the set of efficient portfolios. This was a significant contribution to the field of operations research, demonstrating a pathway to actually computing the efficient frontier. More consequentially for the future of finance, he proposes a simplification the single index model. He argues that a large part of the movement between securities can be explained by their common response to a single, overarching factor, such as the movement of the general stock market. In this model, the return of any given stock is posited to be a linear function of the return on the market index plus a random error term unique to that stock. The critical assumption is that the error terms of different stocks are uncorrelated with each other. This simplification dramatically reduces the number of required inputs. Instead of a vast matrix of covariances, an analyst needs only to estimate each stock's sensitivity to the market index, its beta, along with the variance of the market index and the variance of each stock's unique error term. An evaluation of this claim reveals Markowitz's prescience and pragmatism. He understood that a theoretically perfect model with impossible data requirements possessed limited utility. The single-index model was a brilliant concession to reality. It laid the direct intellectual groundwork for the later development of the capital asset pricing model by William Sharpe and others, which would adopt and extend this very concept of systematic, market-related risk. The simplification, however, came at the cost of assuming away any potential movement between stocks that is independent of the market, such as industry-specific effects, a limitation that more complex multi-factor models would later address. Section 5 Underlying Assumptions and the Philosophy of Rationality. Beneath the mathematical superstructure of portfolio selection lies a set of profound and debatable assumptions about markets and investor behavior. The implicit claim pervading the entire work is that financial markets can be effectively modeled by assuming the existence of a rational investor. This rational agent, as defined by the Markowitz framework, makes decisions based solely on the mean and variance of expected returns. This presumes that investors' preferences can be accurately captured by a quadratic utility function and that they possess the computational ability to solve complex optimization problems. Furthermore, the framework relies on the assumption that the probability distributions of asset returns are sufficiently well behaved to be summarized by their first two statistical moments. Specifically, it functions best when returns are normally distributed, a condition where mean and variance completely define the entire distribution. A critical evaluation of these foundational claims exposes the stylized nature of the model. Subsequent research, particularly in the field of behavioral finance, has compiled extensive evidence that real human investors exhibit systematic psychological biases, such as loss aversion and herd behavior, which deviate from this pure form of rationality. Likewise, empirical studies of financial markets have repeatedly shown that asset return distributions often exhibit fat tails or a higher than normal probability of extreme events, as well as skewness, meaning their risk is asymmetric. These features are captured poorly, if at all, by the metric of variance alone. The enduring power of Markowitz's framework, therefore, rests on its utility as a normative model, a prescription for how one should invest rather than as a descriptive model of how all individuals do invest. It establishes a benchmark of rationality against which actual behavior can be measured. Conclusion. In final evaluation, Harry Markowitz's portfolio selection efficient diversification of investments stands as a work of transformative genius whose influence derives from its radical reframing of the central problem of investment. Its primary contribution was the imposition of a rigorous, logical, and mathematical discipline onto a field previously dominated by anecdote and unquantified principles. The book's claims formalization of risk as variance, the calculus of diversification, through covariance, the conceptualization of the efficient frontier, and the provision of computational methodology selectively established the vocabulary and analytical tools for modern finance. The internal logic is powerful and coherent. Each section builds meticulously upon the last, from the definition of terms to the geometry of the solution and its practical implementation, while the contemporary critique rightly points to the heroic nature of its assumptions about investor rationality and the statistical properties of asset returns. These simplifications were the very source of the model's power. By creating an elegant and solvable representation of a deeply complex reality, Markowitz provided a framework that, while imperfect, was immensely useful. He furnished a new way of thinking, demonstrating that a portfolio should be viewed as a complete entity, a holistic combination of assets whose collective risk profile is a product of its internal correlations. The enduring significance of the work lies in this paradigm shift. Subsequent theories, from the capital asset pricing model to intricate multi-factor models, all operate within the intellectual space that Markowitz first carved out. The book is the foundational text that taught the world of finance to think in terms of the quantifiable, inescapable trade-off between risk and return.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.